Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
The incumbent had been in the office for 14 years. And I think that the people of Georgia this was a referendum on that leadership at the Public Service Commission level, and it was an opportunity for every Georgian to have this choice.
The Georgia Democratic Party has to be one of the happiest political entities this morning, that being the morning of Wednesday, November 5th, 2025, in this edition of On the Record with Atlanta News First. I'm Tim Darnell, joined by my friend and colleague Rick Folbaum. Rick, yesterday, November 4th, just one of the most unique days in American history. It was an off-year election. Usually elections, the major elections take place during even-numbered years, 2022, 24, 26, 28. Right. But in 2025 and in other odd-numbered years, we do have a number of important elections, not the least of which are the municipal elections for Georgia cities all across the state of Georgia. Before we move into the Atlanta mayor's race and the city council and some of the more interesting races that kind of had the potential to showcase a generational and a political shift. Let's start at the top with the two special elections that were held in two Public Service Commission races. Now, the Public Service Commission is one of those under-the-radar agencies, but has huge implications on the daily lives and finances of people like you and me who are tax-paying residents of Atlanta and Georgia. Tell us what the Public Service Commission does, and tell us about the rather surprising results that came out yesterday evening in two special elections to the Public Service Commission.
So first of all, it's important to note that there have not been elections for seats on this Public Service Commission in about 5 years. There have been court challenges. There was a change to the law that lengthened the terms of these commissioners. And so this is really the first time in a while that voters here across the state, this is a statewide election, even though each of these commissioners represents a different part of the state. Everyone in the state votes on the candidates. And so this was the first time that voters here in Georgia in a long time had a chance to voice their opinions on the different candidates for this very important commission that, as you said, it sort of is a little below the radar most of the time. But in light of the fact that this is an off year, that this is the first time that these seats have been up for election in some time, there was a lot of interest, especially on the part of Democrats, who were really looking at these two open seats. They weren't open seats, but these two seats that were up for re-election. These two seats as really, if they could win at least one of them, Democrats here in the state were hoping that would serve as a bellwether for next year's midterm elections, when obviously there are a lot more seats, a lot more positions that are up for grabs. Every statewide office, in fact, here in Georgia will be on the ballot in next year's midterm elections. And so Democrats were hoping for 1 out of 2. They got 2 out of 2. They knocked off 2 incumbent Republicans in favor of 2 Democrats now who will join 3 Republicans. The Republicans will still have the majority on this commission, but at least Democrats will have a say in exactly how much people pay for their utility bills. This is the group that basically regulates all of that. And I think the fact that, this was a pocketbook issue here in Georgia, that Georgians who have seen their power bills go up and up and up, we're just saying they've had enough of it. Their electricity bills are too high. And so this was an opportunity for them to voice that displeasure, and they did. And I think that it's also indicative, if you look across the board at some of the races that took place, not just here in Georgia, but in other parts of the country. People were voting on pocketbook issues. These are, issues that affect day-to-day Americans, issues that that were important in the last election cycle that helped President Donald Trump win a second term, they were not as important this time around. Talking about immigration, talking about crime. If you look at the exit polling data, and these are polls that are conducted of voters as they leave the voting booths, they're asked questions, and they were more concerned, voters were, with issues regarding inflation, issues regarding the cost of living, issues regarding grocery bills. And this is something that the Republicans are going to really have to focus on between now and next year if they have any hope of sort of turning the tide here and preventing Democrats from winning even more important elections in next year's midterm.
And let's talk about some of those more important midterm elections. We have an open race for Georgia governor, open race for Georgia lieutenant governor, open race for Georgia secretary of state, open race for Georgia attorney general. You have to believe that last night's victories, that the Democratic Party is going to use whatever momentum they can generate from these two victories. It was a clean sweep. Among the Public Service Commission, both Democrats defeating both incumbent Republicans. You have to believe that the party is riding high right now. We saw statements from Jason Estevez, Rua Roman, both of whom are candidates for governor next year, both congratulating Alicia Johnson and Peter Hubbard, the two Democrats who are now the newest members of Georgia's Public Service Commission. Really have to believe they're going to use these pocketbook issues to drive workers or voters, I should say, to the polls next year as a way to motivate them to focus on family issues, family affordability, the ability to afford your own health care, buy your own groceries without, overextending yourself on your credit card or overextending your bank account. This could be a winning formula for Democrats moving forward.
Well, they're certainly hoping that that's the case. They're going to look at this and say, hey, this is a roadmap here. If we focus on these issues and we stay away from some of these more sort of cultural issues that are so divisive and focus really more on the bread and butter issues, as you say, that is a winning strategy, and that is something that they will hope to build upon. But I've got to tell you, because I've reached out to the Georgia GOP chair, Josh McCoon, who we spoke with on our program On the Record last week, and I asked him for his response, his reaction to last night's results, and whether he was concerned. He said he's always concerned, but you hear that from all politicos, in election years and other times. But he said that he does not think that the Public Service Commission races, for example, are really indicative of what we're going to see in next year's midterm elections. He sort of compared it to the Falcons, for example. He said if you went to a Falcons game that was played overseas in Brazil and they only had a quarter of their main players participating in the game and they lost, you wouldn't really walk away from that thinking that the loss was going to be indicative of the entire football season. And so he was sort of drawing the comparison and saying that his Republican Party was not at full strength, that their major players and stars were not on the ballot. And so he said, let's not take too much away from last night's results, which is similar to what he told us when we interviewed him last week. So, you're going to hear, almost as exciting as election day is the post-election day spin. And you're going to hear both sides today and in the coming days figure out a way to put their best spin on the results that are going to position their party for the future, saying that they know the winning formula, they know how to achieve it, and they're going to find candidates that are going to help to get them over the finish line. And as far as that's concerned, we'll have to wait and see. We've got a couple of runoffs To go back to some of the local municipal elections that you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we have a couple of runoffs that are going to take place, including an Atlanta City Council races, a couple of those. We are also going to have a runoff in the city of South Fulton, where their embattled mayor, Khalid Kamal, Mayor Kobe, as he likes to be known, did not even finish in the top 5 or the top 4 finishers. So he is out of that race. The top 2 will face off against each other in that race. The city of Sandy Springs is going to see a rematch in a runoff next month that's going to pit the incumbent mayor against his former opponent, who came in second last night in a race between 4 different candidates in Sandy Springs. And so there will be a runoff there. And we're looking towards the beginning of December for this runoff election. So just as everybody was encouraged to go to the polls, it's going to happen all over again in just a few weeks.
Speaking of an election that did not make a runoff, as a matter of fact, it wasn't even close. Andre Dickens handily reelected with well over 70 to 80% of the vote. No surprise there. Probably the least climactic race. It was a very low key race with some other challengers, but Andre Dickens, obviously the number one figure at Atlanta City Hall, elected to his second term, continuing as the 61st mayor of one of the major metropolitan areas of the world. What do you expect from Andre Dickens moving forward?
I mean, to listen to his election victory speech last night, more of the same. He wants to build upon what he considers to be his successes in the first 4 years of his term, and that has to do with affordable housing. That has really been his main goal, is to create more affordable housing here in the city of Atlanta. If you look at some of the polling, that is really among the top 1 or 2 issues according to voters here. So he has hit on something here with a strategy focused on affordable housing and creating more of it. And he says that he wants to build on that over the next 4 years. And so I think that we'll see more of the same from Mayor Dickens. He really did not even face much. I mean, he had opponents, but they really didn't put up much of a fight against Mayor Dickens, who, as you said, glided into a second term pretty much unscathed.
One of the most interesting races that happened last night, and we'll move on to some other topics, but I'll mention it. You and I were speaking about it briefly, and I'll just kind of highlight it. But in the city of Marietta, county seat of metropolitan Atlanta's Cobb County, a massive, vibrant, thriving community and city in itself, a mayor has been serving in the same position for 25 years. In 2010, former state representative Steve Thunder, that is Thunder in quotation marks, Tumlin, was up for re-election last night, and he had a very interesting opponent, a young 24-year-old man, graduate of Kennesaw State University. He is an IT systems engineer named Sam Foster, young African-American man who has never run for public office before. Rick, it was the most amazing race and exciting race to watch until the very end, when Mayor Tumlin did seem, and has seemed at this moment, to have won re-election by only a handful of votes. This has to be one of the most generational shifts that we saw emanating from any place in the United States last night.
Yeah, I mean, well, just the age difference between the 2 candidates is
54.
That's newsworthy right there. Really a clash of generations here, with the old guard able to hang on at the end of the day and win this election, as you said, in a very closely fought battle. But this young man that he ran up against, who did not have any political experience going into this race, certainly has some experience now in terms of waging a campaign that almost was successful. And I think we'll be hearing more from him in the years to come.
The other generational and political shift that the nation took last night, obviously, we were watching the highly anticipated race to become who will become the new mayor of New York City. That does appear to be Zohran Mamdani, who is a Democrat socialist, a self-described Democratic socialist, really has brought out all of the nation's top political operatives to try to thwart his campaign or try to push his campaign over the edge. It's going to be fascinating to see the role that Mayor Mamdani will now play and how he will govern one of the world's most important metropolitan areas.
Well, I think that we are going to hear a lot about Mamdani, not necessarily because of Democrats, but because of Republicans who will now look to frame him as really the leader of the Democratic Party on a national scale. And I don't think that that is correct. First of all, he considers himself a democratic socialist right there. But I think that for Republicans, he really is sort of the perfect foil to be able to put him out there and say to voters in New York City and beyond, look, this is what you want. You're going to vote for Democrats, and you're going to get somebody who is so far left, like Mamdani, who talks about free this and free that in New York City. He got a lot of his support came from younger voters, some of whom have never participated in the electoral process before, but they were energized by his campaign. He won in spite of the fact that he has come out against Israel in the war in Gaza. He has refused to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Of course, New York City has the largest Jewish population of any city in the United States. And so he won in spite of that as well. A lot of headwinds facing him, but at the end of the day, he ran away with that race, beating Andrew Cuomo, the former governor. And like I said, he will now be painted, portrayed by Republicans as the face of the Democratic Party in hopes that they can convince more centrist and moderate voters that if you vote Democrat, you're going to get more people like Mamdani in New York City.
Imagine what the blowback would be, however, let's say Mamdani is actually successful in implementing a lot of the policies without any kind of financial calamity. How do Republicans approach his candidacy if that happens?
It's a big if. We will see. I mean, I covered New York City for many, many years and lived there and covered mayoral contests dating back to David Dickens back in the early 1990s. I think that the idea of a New York City mayor coming in and being able to enact all of his priorities without any interference from the state legislature or other forces, including the governor. Even if the governor is the same, is a Democrat, there are still bound to be clashes between Albany, which is the state capital in New York, and New York City. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, I think that Republicans would pivot if Mamdani comes off and all of a sudden is looking like the bright young star that a lot of Democrats are hoping that he is. I think the Democrats will look for somebody different. They'll pivot. Republicans rather will look for a different punching bag. But I think that right now there are Republicans who are celebrating Mamdani's victory in New York City last night because of the opportunity that it gives them to try to paint all Democrats as being in the mold of a far left Democratic socialist like Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect in New York.
Well, this is the day after Election Day, Wednesday, November 5th. Also, this day is historic in its own nature because as of today, Wednesday, November 5th, 2025, we are officially in day 36 of the ongoing partial government shutdown. Rick, we are now part and now covering the longest government shutdown in American history. Where are we and where are we going to go?
Well, for the first time today, we can report that there appear to be at least some signs, small signs of progress being made in Washington between Republicans and Democrats. There have been talks amongst centrist, more moderate members of each party, and they are few and far between these days, but some of the more moderate members of the Democratic Party and some of the more moderate members of the Republican Party have been talking, and it appears as though there is at least the beginnings of a formation of a compromise that would allow the government to reopen, allow Democrats to vote for a continuing resolution that would reopen the federal government in return for a promise of a standalone vote on these Obamacare subsidies that Democrats have said that is the reason why they have been standing in the way of this, is because they want to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire and get them to promise to extend those government subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year. Republicans have said, we'll talk about that, but not until after you reopen the government. And so now it seems that they have offered to Democrats a standalone vote on this particular issue, and that may be enough to get enough Democrats to join the Republicans to get over that 60-vote threshold that is necessary because of the filibuster rule in order to pass legislation that would reopen the government. It's still early stages. We have not heard anything from any of the party leaders that this is something that's imminent, but it is the beginning of at least some talks that perhaps we are nearing some kind of a compromise that will bring this shutdown to an end.
Well, our next On the Record podcast is 1 week from today. We have had the government shutdown of a central portion of these On the Record podcasts for the past month. Time will tell whether or not we rejoin and retake the next edition of On the Record with Atlanta News First, whether or not the shutdown will be old news. Hopefully it will be. Ahead this Sunday, would also like to remind you to watch and listen to On the Record with Atlanta News First, hosted by my friend Rick Fulbaum and political reporter Doug Reardon. I understand that Vernon Jones, who is the Secretary of State candidate on the Republican side, I should say, will be this week's featured newsmaker. We'll also have all of the latest results on the elections of earlier this week and everything that is coming ahead for next week as we look ahead as the government shutdown continues, and we'll have all of that information for you on the Record with Atlanta News First.
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.